Hotel.
Tap.
Here with Sobek, we're actually going to continue our session from last week. And we do have a couple of questions from the wu-nuwaupu.online.com. The first question I wanted to ask you is, what is meant by zero-time reference?
Okay, thank you for having me again on the show. I am a student teacher of the master teacher, Paa Nabab Yaanuwn, who is the master of heaven and earth. Regarding that question, zero-time reference, the master teacher has actually built on that from several different scrolls. So I'll begin with the holy tablets. For the listening audience, that's chapter 1, called The Creation. It's tablet 8, verse 4. And it reads, each individual conceived has a zero-time reference from the moment of inception, the moment or incident, in pure and holy darkness. That is before cause or effect, before right and wrong, good and evil, before chaos and conception or process or growth, in the impure and unholy light of this world, where there is will, good and evil things happening. Now, we have more information on the zero-time reference as explained in the way of Paa. That one is called concentration. And he speaks on zero-time reference in verses 80 through 83. I'll begin with 80. So, your zero-time reference is the point of your existence, and no one else is likened unto you, as you are waha, which is nuwaupu for unique, one of a kind. 81. Each cell that completes you contains the whole you, as each makha, which is nuwaupu for brain, each brain cell remembers each and everything that you see, hear, taste, smell, and touch. 82. If you cut away part of the brain, you may impair an action, yet you cannot remove anything zakora, which is nuwaupu for remembered. So you will not remove anything remembered. 83. The same goes for each cell, as each cell is a unique you, having the mathematical equivalency that consists of who you are, how you grew into you, which is your own mamtat, which is nuwaupu for matrix. So each cell is a part of your own matrix, and that is making reference to the zero-time reference.
Thank you, Sobek.
Of course, my pleasure.
The second question I have for you is if a person has blood transfusion, does the spirit die, or do they get a new spirit?
Okay, that's a good question. Now, regarding blood transfusions, how it may affect or not affect your spirit, what happens is the answer to that, Paa Nabab Yaanuwn, he taught us extensively in Actual Fact 109 called Genetic Kiss. I suggest anyone that's listening, if they're able to get that book, just read it in its entirety so that you can digest that. However, I can drop a few verses from that particular actual fact. We can go to, verse 166, where it reads, your genes can be overpowered by one open mouth kiss or the intake of another's bodily fluids, be they saliva, semen, blood, which is in the question, sweat, tears, or other fluids. Now, if you're still reading in that same scroll, you can go down to verse 172, and it explains a little further. A living being spirit is its personal guide or personality called itself. 173, a living being spirit is its personal control working off of animal instinct, inborn, impulse, even some react off of the environment. 174 reads, so spirit is just a living thing which acts and reacts out of instinct. It's not controlled by emotions such as pa, which is nuwaupu for the soul. 175 says, to say that a living being spirit is its personal guide and control is also to say that that living being spirit is its personal God, which is no more than action and reaction, cause and effect. However, to build further on that, the master teacher, Paa Nabab Yaanuwn, he taught us what the spirit was in the holy tablets, which is chapter 7 called the living soul, tablet 4 called ether, verses 8 and 9. 8 reads, the spirit is in the blood. The blood is liquid. Verse 9 reads, the spirit acts. See, there's movement. It acts as a spark that ignites the life in the blood. So when you get a blood transfusion, you're taking on that other being's, his DNA. You're taking on their genetics. You're taking on all of what they have going back through their entire genealogy. Because the life or the spirit is in the blood and the life is in the blood, you then will actually merge with that person and take on their characteristics. So yes, your spirit doesn't die per se, but you will get a new spirit, which is a combination of your existing spirit plus that new being's transfused blood into your system. So you become a part of them. And whichever one is stronger will eventually dominate.
So you're definitely saying that the DNA and genetics are affected by this.
Right. Yeah, the DNA and the genetics of that person will absolutely be controlled by that. Once you share or just come in contact with the next person's bodily fluid in any form or fashion, it's going to affect your DNA. And it's usually the results of it will most prominently be seen in the offspring.
Okay. And question number 3. What is the reason for the sun to alter gene orientation as mentioned in actual facts?
All right. That actually is when it talks about the sun altering your gene orientation, that information is taught to us by Paa Nabab Yaanuwn in actual fact number 22. And that scroll is entitled 18 plus 18 plus 1. The 37 genes of the mitochondrial DNA. We built out of this scroll a little bit last week. But that's coming from verse 157, 157, I apologize. It's 157 where that question is actually written verbatim. It says, the positioning of the melanosome serves as an exquisite protective mechanism shielding the keratinocytes nucleus from harmful ultraviolet irradiation. That's a vital part in protecting the DNA from the sun's standard method to alter gene orientation within the nuclear membrane. So even to address that, we must first understand what sun heat genes are. And the master teacher taught us in My Brother the Extraterrestrial, we can begin on question 18, which says, what are Karadu Shalal Re'e, which translates simply as children of the sun. So it says, we are all children of the sun. Yes, that's right. 9 ether sun produce the black race, the Nubans. Our blackness that the Kakasu or Caucasoid try to get by basking in the sun is temporary. They now spray our color on. They use all types of skin toning to look like us. Yet the sun will actually kill them. And many of our people, because mixing with them, we will also be affected by that, right? So it goes on to question number 23, where it says, what are sun heat genes? Well, sun heat genes in us become part of the blood. Again, we're dealing with blood, and they emanate outward to the skin. And your sun heat genes burn the skin black, even boil if you're cut, such as a keloid that only Nagaru or Negroids get. So the question goes on, the sun gives off ether, right? Yes, that is an actual fact. The sun gives off ether, as used in the Greek athein, to burn. You see, the sun heat genes. So mother deities give off heat in her womb. Ether in the form of what's called prominences, why they can see a child in the womb because it actually grows. We're still building on the sun heat genes at this point. So it actually goes on a little further because I want to make aware of what the sun heat genes is, and then it can address what the sun does to that. So it says, question 30, so Negroids carry the sun inside? Yes, Nagaru Negroids do carry his and her sun within, and appeared on the planet at a time when no other race could survive in Taha or Earth's atmosphere, because just after creation, this atmosphere was too dense and much too potent for the weaknesses of Mukmanu or humanoids or mankind. So other races can't live on Earth as us. The answer is given. Yes, that is an actual fact. It is the sun heat genes in those who had to live in Earth's original atmosphere, who had to be much stronger than those of mankind who came much later. So the sun heat genes in the Africans were so dense and potent in your bone marrow and reproductive system, which is why you have more children or offspring than others of mankind. So now understanding the sun heat gene within us as the root race on the planet as well as what the sun does, we can go back to the original scroll of the 18 plus 18 plus 1, the 37 genes of the mitochondria. On verse 155, in part, it says, as after centuries of mixing, the most brutal genocide or death of the gene, of the pristine purity of the Nagaru DNA, some Nagaru have an abundance of a pheomelanin as well, giving them freckles, reddish, ginger. It talks about the complexions that we have by way of this sun heat genes, right? It produces the richest and the darkest hue. So verse 156 says, these melanosomes travel from the melanocyte up and throughout the lower epidermal cells, entering and moving about the cell until settling in a position above the cell's nucleus. Why would that happen? Well, verse 157 goes on to teach us this positioning of the melanosomes serve as an exquisite protective mechanism, protecting us, shielding the keratinocytes from nucleus from harmful ultraviolet radiation. Now, the sun's standard method to alter the gene orientation is the ultraviolet irradiation. So we have a coating that's on us that was given to us by the Asaru that protects us from that. And this shielding is necessary to prevent that, along with bacteria, abrasions, and dehydration. So the activity is more accelerated now due to the deterioration of the ozone layer, what we're experiencing on the planet today. So it now allows for even more of the sun's powerful emissions to reach the Earth. So as the Paa Nabab or the sun cycle progresses through the hereafter, the sun will have more bursts, and they now know that their skin can't protect them. But we actually have the divine DNA given to us, which gives us a protection. So the sun naturally will attack that part of the nucleus and the genes if you don't have that coating. That's just how potent the sun is. But being that we lived on the planet first, we were able to be gifted with that protection, and it still stands to reason today, unless, of course, you mix your genes with others, which weakens your DNA. So that's why the sun is actually doing what it does, and we're protected by way of our divine DNA, so it doesn't actually happen to us on a higher rate as it would any other race.
So when you mix your seed with another culture,
correct,
does that bring down the ether level? Because there's 9 ethers. So if you mix in with, if you're a black breed and you're mixing in with Italian, what does that bring your ether level down to?
Right. Well, the ether level, of course, is like you stated, would be 9. But with continued mixing of the races, you dilute it. So it would be similar if you had all black coffee and you added a creamer, be it non-dairy or regular. Once you add that creamer, the potency of the pure dark coffee is lessened. So while you won't be able to determine how far your ether goes as far as a physical expression, other than the grade of the hair, even the grade of the complexion, but also more so in the mentality, there's a loss of ether. You start to want to emulate even the weaker genes if enough of it is introduced into your cell. So your child may be a little less potent in his genetics. And then if they have children and they mix as well, it keeps dropping and dropping and dropping until you actually become one of the 6 ether beings, which is adverse to non-ether in mentality, actions, thoughts and everything. So yeah, your ether can drop by way of mixing and diluting your particular pure root race seed. Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
As of right now, those are only the 3 questions that caught my attention. So Sobek, where can we actually find more of this information online?
Okay, actually you can really, all of us that are internet savvy or even newcomers to the internet, you simply go on, you can Google wu-nuwaupu, that's N-U-W-A-U-P-U, and what that will do is pull up various sites that we have, such as United Nuwaubian Nation, where you can actually see the updates that are provided each and every Tuesday. You can stream back to previous updates. You can also watch it on Tuesdays as well. You can go to nuwaupic.com to actually learn your ancient language. There's a series of teachers that are on there, and they actually teach you from the alphabet to the words to the numbers to actually making phrases. And what that does, that actually puts you on the correct frequency of your own root race. It's very important to know that you need to be on your own frequency. We're out of tune if we're on anyone else's frequency. And what happens then is, even when you go to chant or pray or just speak with your ancestors because you're out of tune, you will not be able to hear them. They won't be able to hear you clearly, and you'll hear other voices and have other random thoughts that interfere with that because it's similar to a radio. You're not tuned in all the way. So until you find your own frequency, which is aided by learning the language, you will not be able to communicate as freely back and forth with your ancestors. And we certainly need them in this day and time, just to keep us on the right path, or Pa Tara, the way.
Is meditation beneficial to communicating with your ancestors?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because they've already transitioned to the other side. So they would be the voice of reason. In other words, when you know that you shouldn't go down a certain block, but you're standing there questioning yourself, should I go this way? And that voice that says, don't go down there, that's going to be dangerous. That's one of your ancestors by way of the 30 personalities that we have within us. That particular one is telling you because it's actually agreeable. So it's telling you, don't go down that way. But when you verse it and think, nah, I'm still going to go that way, then you know that may be one of the ones that's not for your benefit. So, yeah, you have to be able to tune in to the ones that are agreeable to you and eventually learn to listen only to your true voice. So that happens when you learn how to chant, when you learn this language. You will actually be able to commune with them, and they will guide you from the other side through this mess that we call a physical existence, which is much shorter and far shorter and illusory. It's an illusion compared to what real life is. They're actually waiting for you to come on the other side. But while you're here, you can certainly use their guidance.
So is the pineal gland related to this example that you use as far as going down the street? Would you say that their pineal gland is not active?
Right. It's not active, and the pineal gland is not active in everyone. Of course, when you have these powers, these higher powers, which are really yours naturally through natural nature, if you don't use them, then they become dormant. It's very similar to if you just don't use a muscle, it no longer works for you. So we need to go ahead and regroup and sharpen up all of those senses that we have, all of those brain synapses, those sparks of intuitive intelligence, moving on to outintelligence and outformation. You can't access that if you have become densified by being on this realm and living outside of your natural nature. So the whole doctrine is the cure for that. With wu-nuwaupu, you now know who you are as the root race, and you begin to utilize that mindset. That's called nine mind. And once you're using nine mind, you're thinking clearly. You are, you're not. People say you're insane, but that's not even the correct description for what's happening, because insane actually infers you're inside the state of sanity. We're not. We're out sane right now. We're out of our mind, many of us, simply because we're not utilizing or working with natural nature. There's a penalty for that. If you don't work with natural nature, it will not work with you. Therefore, you will find yourself in certain unagreeable or unpleasant circumstances that you can never seem to get out of, as long as you're utilizing an alien force to reach out to. In other words, you're praying to a deity that was given to you by the oppressor. So that can't possibly work for you. How could you have a deity or call on a deity, a colorless deity? How can they help a person of color? That's just not right knowledge.
Sure, definitely. All right. So I guess that sums up this session today. As everyone heard, all the listeners, you know where to get the information at. Just simply type in Google wu-nuwaupu online, and it will pop up. And you can also visit for any of Dr. Malachi Z.K. York books. You can actually visit breakingthespell999.com. We are now open for business. You can also find videos, scarves, all kinds of products. Just simply visit the website and you will see what is available. With that being said, if Sobek wants to close with anything.
I just want to briefly say thank you again, for having me on. It's my pleasure building with this particular doctrine. It's ours. And, again, listeners, if you can, next time call in. If you have questions, you can also, reach out, and we'll do our best to answer them. Paa Nabab Yaanuwn is the master of heaven and earth, also known as Malachi Z. Kabina York. I definitely profess he is innocent, and he will be home with us soon. And again, my good brother, as always, thank you for having me on.